Hi everybody, I hope you're all doing well. It's an absolutely beautiful winter morning here in the south of England. There's no clouds. The sun was up at like 7:30 this morning. You can feel the turn of the season, very soon. Everything is going to change, but yeah, it's so beautiful today, and I hope it stays beautiful in the coming week because I am off to back tomorrow. My week off has finally arrived, and these past 2 weeks since you saw me last, I have been so busy. I've continued to juggle 2 jobs, being absolutely exhausted, training up in my new job and such, busy doing this, that and the other, just feeling so exhausted at the end of each day. But on Friday I finished for the week, and I have officially finished my old job now. And I actually had to have a little bit of a cry when I finished on Friday. I just turned off my laptop and burst into tears because it's so strange to think that such a big chunk of my life in that job is now done. Granted, it's for 8 months. It's not permanent, but it's possible it could become permanent. I don't know. And we'll see how these 8 months go. And, it was just done. It just felt so strange when I signed off work on Friday. So I had a little bit of a cry, but I'm all right now. When I get back from my week off, I will be full-time in my new job. So exciting times. But this month of juggling is now finally over, which means I can actually relax in an evening and not just automatically fall asleep because I'm so tired, and be able to read properly. But anyway, these past 2 weeks I've been reading quite a chunky book called Threadneedle by Cari Thomas, and I am here to talk about it. So I got this, I realised looking back through, because I bought this off Amazon, so I had the history, I had the information. I was able to determine that I actually ordered this the day before it got published. So I think I must have just read the blurb and gone, ooh, I like that. I really like that. It makes me think of A Discovery of Witches, which I absolutely fucking adored, which was also set in modern Oxford, which is also about modern witch and magic and such. I think that must have what made me buy it. And I regret it, unfortunately. Okay, here we go. Let's talk about Threadneedle. So, Cari Thomas, this is her debut novel. She grew up in Wales and loved magic and such, and I believe she went to Warwick. Let me just check her blurb in the back of this book. Creative writing at Warwick University, and she studied journalism at the Cardiff School of Journalism. So she worked on magazines and such, and over time she started writing this novel, and she has gone on to publish a couple of other novels. This is the first in like a series, and well, I say in a series, but then the book kind of has a very distinct ending, but I don't know if she wrote it that way because she didn't know if she was going to carry on with it as a series, or possibly the other 2 books are kind of like within the same world. I don't know because I haven't read them. But anyway, back to this. So that's the blurb about Cari, and this is her debut novel. It follows a girl called Anne who lives with her aunt, who is only ever referred to as Aunt. She doesn't get a name. She doesn't have a name. And it's like, oh, okay, that's odd. Anyway, they live in Oxfordshire, like I said, and they have a kind of like a really beautiful house. And Aunt is very particular on the way how things should be. She is a binder, and that means that it's a form of magic using threads and knots. If you have read Discovery of Witches, you probably know what I'm talking about, because that is a big part of the second book of the series, and it's about using various threads that denote various different things and knot and bind them together, and the consequences of things that happen from doing that then happen, and you need to do like several knots and do them in certain sequences in order for certain things to happen. However, there is another form of magic, which is things, you know, that we would regard to as, well, I don't want to say normal magic, but you know, it's the magic that you think of when you think of magic. It's, you know, if you think like Harry Potter and stuff like that, where it's, you know, probably like spells, magical objects, things that you can do that are like potions and stuff like that, that kind of magic. But Aunt is very against it. She doesn't believe in that magic. She's like, no, the binding magic is the only true magic, and that is how it shall be. And she is bringing Anne up in that kind of knowledge, but Anne really doesn't like it. She has issues with remembering what she needs to do, the way that her aunt drills her with this information, the way her aunt kind of cuts her off from the world. It's just them two in this house constantly learning about knots and bindings and such, and so Anne finds it a lot. And it's coming up to her 16th birthday, and when she reaches that age, she has to go through a ceremony which will bind her magic forever, for the good. And so then she will become a binder like her aunt. But then Effie enters her life, and Attis as well. But Effie is the first one who she meets. And Effie is like this massive, like, breath of fresh air. Like, she sets off a bomb in the house almost just by her presence being there. She is very much the other magic. She gives presents to Anne, like shoes, these good that she's kind of grown up with because of Effie's connection to Aunt. I'll talk about that in a minute. Like shoes that will change the size of her feet at any point in her life so that they will permanently fit. I do like that. A hairbrush that will automatically make her hair absolutely gorgeous when you use it. I like the idea of that too. And lots of other things. And she introduces Anne to this completely new world where anything is kind of possible. I liked the concept of various things, like there is a shop that sells memories. There is a library where the librarian feeds off words. There's all these things that just suddenly her eyes are just open to, and it makes her question if her aunt was right, that this magic that Effie's introducing to her is completely wrong. It's a terrible, it's a massive mistake. It's not who she is. Or if her aunt is right. Let me get that right in my head. Words are the wrong way around. If her aunt was right, and that the Effie's magic is a complete no-go, or that her aunt was wrong and Effie's magic is the true magic in the universe. So yeah, it's all about questioning, you know, stuff about it. So that's basically the general gist of the book. So I went into this like I was hoping that it would be like, in a way, a Discovery of Witches 2.0. Let's put it that way. And unfortunately, it wasn't. Firstly, I think I am the wrong target audience. I'm the target audience for a Discovery of Witches. I'm not the target audience for this. This felt... it's well, as far as I know, it's not classed as a YA book, but it felt like it was written for a YA audience. I just felt like I'm a bit too, I'm not too old, but I'm just a bit like, that this is your biggest problem? This is what? There's other stuff in the world, you know. And there were times when I was listening to Aunt and I'm like, yeah, I get it. Just, I get ya. Sometimes Anne kind of annoyed me. She did. It just, yeah, I just felt like, who is this aimed for? Because I don't understand. Now, Effie does teach Anne various things through the course of this book, because obviously this is a different type of magic that she's ever seen in her life. She has no idea what things are, yada yada yada. But I just kind of felt like at times it just felt a little spoon-fed. Like, you are only going to be introduced to the elements of magic that are important to this precise minute, because it's convenient to say it. It's not completely, it's not in the roots, as it were. It's just literally just being dumped on top of the surface to go, look at that for this chapter. Okay, now dump on that. Now look at that for that chapter. It just felt like I needed this world, because especially if we're talking about different types of magic and the history and the weight of the power and such, I wanted to feel that weight and the power from the roots upwards, and I didn't. I think that's the thing about fantasy and such, is that there has to be a logic to it, especially if you're doing things like magic. I totally love and respect Cari for doing, you know, all the various research and magic that is talked about on the blurb in the back of the book, and everything, and incorporating it, just as I do with any author who does that with magic related stories and such. But this, it kind of felt like it was more for the magic teaching and such, felt it was more for someone with a shorter attention span. And I hate saying that. It just, yeah, I didn't feel it in the guts of the story. I didn't feel the weight of it. Like with Aunt, how she kept on going on about how, oh, that's terrible magic, la 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 la. I didn't feel why she felt that way. And in order to turn your back on a whole society because of your beliefs and feelings, you have to have big beliefs and feelings. But I didn't get that. That's the problem. It didn't have that weight of history for me. Just to emphasize, for me. When it comes to characterization as well, I mean, some characters I was okay with, and other ones just felt like, why are you there? I got incredibly frustrated with Anne, as I mentioned before. And Anne, bless her, I know she's young, she's naive, she's only had this one way of life, she doesn't know anything about the other world and everything. Okay, I'm willing to go along with that, because, you know, it's her seeing the world and learning new things, etc. But the problem is that I didn't care, and I didn't like her particularly. She's not a bad person, far from it. It was just a bit like, you've got to give me something. You've got to give me some kind of substance in order to have me go along for the ride. And I just didn't get that. So I felt kind of alienated, because I felt like I'm the wrong target audience for this. I felt that it was too on the surface. It had no depth to it. And I had a lead character who I didn't really care about. And I just felt like, oh, for goodness sake, stop being a child at times about her. She was just being like a petulant child at times for me. Also, Cari made some odd choices. First of all, calling Aunt. Why doesn't she get a name? Why not? I just kind of felt like as soon as it started and she was just referred to as Aunt, I felt that was really fucking disrespectful in my eye. I mean, obviously it's not my character. I don't make those decisions. I don't, whatever. But it just kind of felt like, so she doesn't even get a name? That's a bit rude. That's a bit rude in my eyes. Because let's face it, she's one of the more interesting characters out of everyone in the whole book. And she doesn't get a name? Just... Even if you wanted to hide her identity for a certain purpose later down the line, you could have given her a fake name. I don't know, like Julia or something. Just something that just allowed her to be identified as a person. But you just gave her the title, you just gave her Aunt. I just felt incredibly awkward reading her because of that. Yet I bloody loved her because she was so interesting a character. It's so strange. Cari also, there's family connections that I'm just like, just describe them what they are. So Aunt is Aunt. Yeah, Aunt's sister is referred to just by her by that character's first name. So why isn't that other person Aunt? Why does Aunt get called Aunt and and other Aunt is called by her name? I do not get it. It was just like, what? Why? What? I was sat here reading this and kind of either out loud or in my head going, why, Cari? Why are you doing that? And I just spent a lot of time doing that. And I think I lost focus from the book because of that. Like I shouldn't be constantly questioning the author of the things that she did writing this book whilst reading this book. She also, it felt like she was doing too much. I mean, this is like 500 odd pages, 550 pages. And there were big chunks of this where I just felt like, well, you don't need that. You could completely compress that down. Why are we going off and focusing on, B plots and such that aren't really necessary? There's too many people. There's too much chaos. It just feels like I'm constantly being in a run. It was too much. It was too loud. It was just... okay, the ending, it's satisfying, but then at the same time it just ends. It's just boom, there, done. And like I said, the ending, you could see if this was just going to be the one book, you could see it as, okay, that's a satisfying ending. But also, if it is it was intended to be like a cliffhanger thing for a second book, it was kind of obvious. It was kind of obvious. Like, you introduce Anne to this whole world of magic where anything is possible. Anything is possible. So, yeah, it was obvious. And I just sat here, closed the book, and was like, okay. It felt like this was too much. Trying it too hard. Now, Cari does write beautifully. I'm not going to deny that. And she did bring places and such vividly to life. I am not going to deny that either. It just felt like I spent more time questioning why Cari did what she did in writing this book than actually absorbing the story. And that's the problem. I actually looked this up on Goodreads because I was curious. And I think it was about 3.6 or something. Oh no, was this 3.9? I think 3.6 might have been the previous book that I reviewed. Wives Like Us by Pam Sykes. So it might be more 3.9. But either way, it was 3 point something. And Goodreads, if a book doesn't get a minimum of 4 stars, then it's got problems. And actually, when you look at the stars, it was really interesting. It's either like 1 star or 4 star. The occasional 5, but 4 it's 1 or 4 as the prominent ones. So this truly is a Marmite book. You either love it or you hate it. And I don't know if maybe just because, obviously, like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, that these 2 weeks I've just been so busy with juggling 2 jobs and, getting everything ready to move over to my new job and just being constantly exhausted and trips into the office and all of that lot. Maybe I wasn't in the right headspace to read this. That is a factor as well. And I completely recognize that. But I can't help but pin down the fact that I was constantly in my head or out loud as I was reading this saying, Cari, why are you doing what you're doing? And if the book is making me do that, then it's not a book for me. I'm sure there are people who will absolutely love this book. I'm sure there will be people who have gone on to read the other books as well. But I felt like I'm too old for this. I wanted a Discovery of Witches 2.0, but unfortunately I got Teen Discovery of Witches 2.0. Okay, let's put it that way. I'm not going to piss on it just because of that I just felt like I sometimes you're not the target audience, and sometimes you really feel that you are not the target audience, and I really felt it with this book. It's absolutely beautiful cover, and obviously because I love sewing, I love magic, I love puzzles and all that lot, I thought this would be a Oxford, all that lot, I thought this would be a massive tick of books that I would like. But yeah, and the fact that the tagline is magic is the first sin and it must be bound, I just thought, what an intriguing thing. It just didn't deliver for me. I'm not the target audience. if magic is rooted in such history and depth, I want a book that makes me feel it. And if you're after a book about magic that really makes you feel it, about witchcraft and such as that, then I would recommend A Discovery of Witches over Threadneedle. But then it's each to their own, isn't it? Just because I didn't get along with this book, that doesn't mean that you won't get along with this book. But yeah, for the actual plot, or plots, because of all the B plots that we had, for the characterization, which wasn't great, the choices that Cari made, the constant felt like you were rushing around everywhere, and a disappointing ending, it's a no from me. But I am proud that I got through the 555 pages, given the last time, because I was the Wives Like Us, I was like, I had to DNF it after 100 pages. I was like, no, I'm determined, I'm going to carry on. I got through the 550 pages of this book, but yeah, it just didn't work for me. So those are my thoughts on Threadneedle by Cari Thomas. So it's time to ask my usual questions. Would I read this again? You know what? I am going to say I'm not interested in reading it again, but I think I'm going to hold on to it and try it again, because these past 2 weeks, as I said, because I've been so crazy busy and so exhausted and such, perhaps my headspace wasn't in the right place for this. And let's not forget, because I did with the Kate Thornton book, The Clockmaker's Daughter, the first time I tried to read it, I could not get through that book, and I had to stop, and I deliberately put it back in my jar, and when I got back to it, like months later, I was in a lot better headspace and I was able to get through it. So okay, granted it wasn't the best book, but still I got through it and I was able to have an opinion about it. So I just think maybe perhaps I was focusing on a lot of the negatives because of my headspace that I was in. So I am willing to put this back on my bookshelf and try it again in a clearer headspace. So yeah, I'm not fussed about rereading it, but I would give it a go. Would I recommend this to anyone? As I said, if you want someone who's like young adult, or is really interested in young adult fiction, who wants like a magic related story, then I'd probably say, you know, you might be interested in reading it. But I would also tell them A Discovery of Witches is far superior, and yeah, a lot more, a lot deeper and a lot better. Would I read any more of Cari Thomas's books? Well, given that she's only published 3 books, and I believe they all relate to this series, I would want to read something that's completely disconnected. So I would be willing to read other works by Cari, but I'd want something from a completely different world of story writing from her. So yeah, this is my first time reading her work, so therefore it's only fair that I read something of hers, a second work of hers, but I would prefer it to be from a completely different world. So those are my thoughts on Threadneedle by Cari Thomas. Have you read this book? I'd love to know what you think. Leave me a comment in the comments box below. Thumbs up, thumbs down, totally at your side. And I'll be back with my thought with my next read, which I'm taking with me to Bath tomorrow, and it's not a big read, so I think I'll be back next weekend, and that is The Christmas Jigsaw Murders by Alexandra Benedict. I'm excited to see how this goes. I love Christmas, I love jigsaws, I love murder mysteries, so it just seems like it's perfect for me. Anyway, I will be back with my thoughts on that as soon as I'm done, and yeah, I'm looking forward to going to Bath and just having some time just to myself, to explore the city, to go to some museums and just have a breath of fresh air. And I'm hoping the weather stays absolutely beautiful while I'm there. All right then, everyone. Bye.